evening, good afternoon. Hello, my friends. I am back, and this time I have the lovely Terrina Picarello back. And everyone loves when you come, and I get so many questions afterwards. People really, really want to work with you, and I'm like, she's probably got the biggest wait list of ever right now.
I do.
Yeah, and so I've been trying to head people in other directions just for a little while.
Yeah, maybe we can even talk about how do you find somebody? What are the places that you go? Because,
Yeah,
yeah,
I would
there's only
love
one
to
of
do
me.
that because we did kind of leave it off, kind of sharing with people that they could, in some cases find somebody that would be willing to do pro bono or to work on scale, but also to
Yeah.
just give them advice on how to find somebody, how to know if they're actually capable of helping you for what you need, because there's a lot of people that are processing trauma they didn't even know they had.
Yes. And the definition of trauma, too, would be kind of helpful. And really, that is what I do know. And I'd love to use some, format like this to just share what you can do yourself.
Right. It's
What
good.
can you do yourself to take care of yourself until you find somebody? But also, while you have somebody, you still should be doing things yourself.
Right. I love it. And so go girl, go. Tell us.
All right. So what we would call it, biologically is coherence. So coherence is your nervous system. So that's your brain, your ability to think, but your ability to feel comfortable in your chest. If people sometimes notice when you get anxiety, you'll feel tightness in your chest. Some people feel like a flutter. They might feel like they can feel their heartbeat. Everybody's different, but that's, you know, duh is a clinical word, right? Like that's anxiety. So anxiety means that there's something that doesn't feel safe. So it could be something you're thinking about that makes you not feel safe. So what I want people to know is that energy does follow thought. Your physiological auto program, your caveman brain is hard drive programmed. It's already got a code that says follow the thoughts. So we say your thoughts create your reality. Your thoughts create your biology, and your thoughts create whether you have tightness in your chest. It doesn't feel that good. So sometimes you might have something happening right in front of you, like there was a car accident or someone is screaming at their child in the grocery store, and it disturbs your peace. So you might feel your body tighten up. So it could be something that's happening in your environment, and it could be small, medium, large. So the level of tightness might be dependent on if it's a small, medium, or large event in your environment. But sometimes we've had that experience of where our body just does something and there's nobody around and nothing going on. Right. So if that ever happens, I just want everybody to have the practice of what was I just thinking? What movie was I just playing in my head? What thoughts have I been sitting with? And so, we tend to say like everyone has issues. So a definition of an issue for therapy speak would be anything that disturbs your peace. Anything that disturbs your peace. And so biologically, your state of feeling clear and being able to take a deep breath and being of clear mind so that you can think without being so stressed you can't get your thoughts together. So just watch for that. So coherence is a balanced state between your body and your brain. So you can feel what you're feeling without being overwhelmed and being able to take a breath. And you can think, you can remember your phone number. You can say 2 + 2 is 4. So, we all have the experience of when we start to kind of freak out. And it doesn't really matter what freaks us out, but we all freak out. So what happens when you're freaking out is you're starting to get so upset you can't think clearly. That's what I want everyone to look for. That's the little state where you're going out of that zone, that optimal zone of health and wellness and balance. And that's the zone of your true mind, body, spirit power. So we're in a body. We've all incarnated and we're walking around in a 3D, body. So our spirit has to have a relationship with our body. And our spirit has to, be decent playmates, and, they have to play well with each other. So you don't want them to fight each other.
Yes, I even when was sharing that with people, I'm like, imagine that your body and your spirit are they're kind of different, but they want to get married, and your mind's kind of helping them.
And you have to bridge that gap. So God, the creator, the divine, whatever you want to call it, gave us this biology, and it's just miraculous and perfectly formed. But it's up to us to sort of pay enough attention and spend some time in to make sure we know the operating system and how our soul and our spirit collaborate with our physical operating system. So there's those animal instincts, is what I call caveman brain. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the auto programming we all come in with. It has certain things like fire, run, big scary noise, look around, alert, run, right? Like there's certain auto programs that are just, from evolution and from our ancestors, which is helpful. So we don't have to learn from scratch every time we come into a body. So that those old instincts, animal instincts, we forget that we're mammals, but we're mammals. Human beings are mammals. We really care about our group. It disturbs our peace if somebody's getting hurt in front of us. And as mammals, we care about other mammals. So it would upset a human if we see an animal being abused. So that's supposed to rattle us. And it's supposed to rattle us at a body level so we can kind of coherently tune in, like, okay, what do I need to do? So engage your thinking. What should I do about this situation? And how do I feel about it here, personally, as a mammal person? What's important? Yeah. And then your gut, that gut instinct, when you get that feeling of like a rock in your stomach, or you get that heat in your stomach, that's your first priority of safe, not safe. So if you think about the three little spaces of energy of information, our soul has to have a relationship with all three of those. So there's like four things for us to pay attention to: our soul and our spirit, our purpose, our passion, the thing that's more than just the physical body, that woo-woo thing, right? Yes. And then your brain helps you understand the facts and understand how to think your way out of something. Your heart, how important is it to myself and relationships? How important is what's happening to my group? And then your gut is safe, not safe, alive or dead. So it's really just those four things. So it's your mind, your emotions, your body, and your spirit. So those are four, and that's just four. So when you're freaking out, I sort of train myself. And then when I work with somebody, I spend a lot of time at first saying, when you're freaking out and feeling overwhelmed, just go down the list. Is it something I'm thinking about and not really happening? Is it something about other people and how my relationships are? Is it physically safe or not safe? A lot of times we're not in danger. A lot of times we're not in imminent physical harm, but the other parts of the system don't care. Right. So they just run amok. And that's where your soul comes in to say, hold on. Is this really an existential crisis? Is this literally catastrophic? And that's where your soul can come in and sort of be the mature CEO of the group and say, hold on, calm down. We're not dying. We're okay. We trust in the divine, that we won't be given anything we can't handle, that we'll always have the inner or outer resources to effectively deal with anything that comes our way. That is my mantra in my head for myself. And it's, I can handle it between what I already know from my life experience and what I could just guess intuitively is the right thing. And then I can ask for help.
Right. You've got the social support as well, which is awesome. And so when you let's go back because originally before you became a therapist, you were a life coach, and so I would
Mhm.
love for you to share the difference in your mind.
So life coaches um, are, I love to work with life coaches when I'm working with somebody when we're doing a lot of dynamic change. So a life coach says, where are you now? And then what's important to you? So what are your values? What's important to you? Because if you can live and organize your life and your relationships and your health based on your values, that's a really quick sync up. It's
Mm-hmm.
very, very powerful. So a good coach will help you at first to just assess those things. What are your values? What's important to you? You know, how would your health need to be? How would your environment need to be so that you can live your values? And then you just kind of look for anything that needs to be corrected. What do you need that you don't have? And then a life coach will help you identify some goals. And the goals are achievable, they're doable, with what you have to work with. And there's a time that you'll pick. The coach will help you pick a time and say, okay, we're gonna have this goal, and then we're gonna break up what are the steps that we would need to have to get to this goal. So then you break it up into small little steps so that you have a little map so you can stay on course. And usually you'll meet with your coach maybe once a week and say, okay, what tasks did you achieve this week? Did you make that phone call? Were you able to get a doctor's appointment? Were you able to work out? Were you able to meditate? So those are the steps that you have. Those are the action steps to get you towards your goal of whatever it is you decided. And so those action steps are what a coach will keep you on task with. And so when I work with somebody with a coach, we love to collaborate with coaches because we'll break it down on those 4 levels. So we'll say, this is our overall process of change. And so, what are the new things we're going to be doing that we didn't used to do? Like, could be meditation, prayer, therapy, could be
Self-care,
all
yeah.
kinds of all that stuff. And then, what at the physical level am I going to do? Am I going to make a phone call? Am I going to get labs done? Am I whatever that is? Or am I going to make a phone call and hire a business coach? Whatever those action steps are. And then what do I need to do to correct my thinking? So on the mental level, it would be, what are the negative thoughts that I'm noticing coming in? And then what do I do? What's my strategy to intervene when I have that negative thought of, well, who do I think I am? And I can't do it. And I'm not enough. And I'm insufficient. And all that stuff. And then where you use your life coach is that, um, you know, setting objectable small steps towards your goal, and someone holds you accountable and knows that you said you were going to do it. And then when you meet with your coach, they go, so let's go down our list. And then it's no judgment. So you don't want to have a coach that's a drill sergeant. You don't want to have a shame coach. That is, I would say, anyone listening, that is not the appropriate coach. Somebody that makes you feel bad that you didn't make a phone call. That's not my idea of a healthy coach, because it's a no judgment zone. It's, this is how I am. And then you just go, how does it make sense that I couldn't get that down? So then we're missing something. So it isn't like you're a failure. It's just like, oh, well, I wonder what that is. And then when I work with a coach, if there's some block that the coach and the client can't figure out, that's where therapy comes in, right? So then the little spots that are for me as a counselor and I'm trying to help reprocess a traumatic event, maybe something that happened in the past that created that unconscious block.
Right.
And the name of it is unconscious block. So it's unconscious. You would never figure it out.
Right.
So the way our brain works is when something was really scary, too much for us, especially when we were a little person, and we really, when you're a kid, you can't really do anything about anything.
Right.
So it's especially terrifying to children when something goes wrong. And it could even just be you got lost at the fair, you got lost at the mall. It's terrifying because you have no idea if that's permanent. You're lost forever for the rest of your life. A 6-year-old would definitely say, I'll never have a family again. I'm an orphan, and that because they're 6, they don't know. And so, it gets stuck in there. of, well, it was my fault that I didn't hold mommy's hand. She told me to stay right here and I didn't listen. So it's my fault that I lost my family. That would be a typical thing a 6-year-old would do. And so that would count as a trauma.
Right.
So a trauma is really just anything that went wrong that could have gotten stuck in your hard drive. It's like a virus in your processor.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sends you the wrong code 25 or 30 years later, that somehow you're going to mess it up again. So anywhere that someone gets stuck, so if you get stuck in your life, even when you're not working with a coach, just something that you go, this doesn't even make sense that I can't get this done. This doesn't make sense. Something that is an opposite of your goals and your values, and you just can't get rid of that thing. Then you take that to someone like me who can help you get down into the unconscious, code and reset it, because a lot of things are not hugely terrifying to remember. You survived if you're in my office.
Right. Right.
So you survived. So it can't possibly be too hard to remember because it's already a part of your history. So people get kind of scared to go back and deal with something, but it's never that hard. That's what I think people don't understand about trauma work. It's and it can be really emotional because it's so powerful. Mm-hmm. But it's where you go back and reclaim a part of yourself that just sort of dropped off somewhere and is hiding in a closet.
Yeah.
And
you need shine it up and pull it out.
Yeah, you just need that part. You say, well, welcome back because we're safe now and I'm going to take good care of you. And you're okay. Come live with me. I'm 35. I'm 45. I don't live like that anymore. That's really what trauma work is. If you go to a trauma therapist, is we just we reprocess an event that was too much for a little kid. It's usually the 0 to 13 stuff. Yeah. And it doesn't take long, and we're not going to relive it. It's not exposure, and we just reset it. So a therapist is used the best for things that you just don't even know what that behavior is about. You don't even know, you can't figure out why you would even have that. And something that just blocks your growth and really keeps you stuck. That's the things you take to a therapist. And the way that therapy and coaching can work is that a therapist can do what a life coach does and what a therapist does. But a life coach can't really do that deeper stuff. They can help you with some of it, but the deeper unconscious stuff is not something that they're supposed to kind of work with. So after I was a life coach for a really long time, I found it fun for me because every time I help someone, I'm learning more myself. I'm clearing something else myself. I'm getting this wonderful vicarious therapy and this vicarious coaching. So, you teach what you want to learn. So I get better and better at my own life skills when I work with people. But I decided to just bite the bullet, much as I hated school. I hated school. So
which is so funny because you love to learn, but it's just somebody else's curriculum, somebody else's.
Yeah, I was not a great rule follower. So I wasn't a great little soldier, stand in line and put your feet forward. And I was always in trouble. So I was always that outlying troublemaker. Yeah. So, and I would raise my hand and say, well, how do you know that for sure? Well, what about this? So, but I did it and just got through it. And so I just have
going
that
deeper with people and being able to really untie the knots of the past and all that. I do have, it made me think of a question. When periodically I'll have somebody on the show that they're kind of sharing publicly their trauma for the first time because they want to help other people or they want to get the word out so that they can get information back. And some of them have done a lot of extensive work with somebody that's good like you. And then other ones, they haven't. And what happens after the show is there's kind of this new layer of processing. Can you speak on that? Because I'd be I would love for the people, because I get a lot of people wanting to share their story on the channel. And I think it'd be good to hear a professional opinion on it.
So it's a very vulnerable thing first to share your story, because as you share it with another person, it becomes real. So that's where you and I at one point talked about bearing witness. Bearing witness is such a profoundly important action. It's something you do. So you as a person sharing, you know that this has happened. You're tired of carrying the secret, which that's what keeps you sick. So it's so important to just say it to someone. But you want to make sure that who you say it to is a safe receiver, because you're in such a vulnerable position. And there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of shame in a secret. And if somebody's abused you in a family, especially if you've been sexually abused or physically abused, they're going to definitely make you certain that it's your fault. You, because of you, this is what happened. And if you weren't so bad, I wouldn't have had to treat you so poorly. And so shame is always this toxic underbelly of abuse. And it's something that the person who abused you handed you and gave you. It doesn't belong to you. But until you tell on them, it's so important to just tell someone that you trust what happened, because then it shifts the energy back to the bad guy. Okay. Because you shouldn't carry their shame for them and their secret, because it will literally make you physically sick, and it'll make your spirit sick.
And usually, is it that they scare them with other family members or their lives, or like what is it that they're most afraid of?
Well, usually the abuse happens young. So the abusers know for sure that it is best to get you when you're young, because you're not even sure what the rules are. If you're 6 or 8, you don't know. Right. And you are taught to respect authority, listen to adults. If an adult tells you something, don't mouth back, just, say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, and do what you're told, right? We hear that everywhere. So we're very vulnerable as children to an adult just leading us through something, anything. Come over here, have this, do this, right? And so we're taught to follow directions. So we'll do that. And then after a few times of, what they'll do is groom you. So they'll abuse you, but they'll set you up so that you're not physically terrified, and you're usually not harmed physically where it leaves a mark.
Right.
So they'll do that on purpose so that the child believes they were complicit. The child believes that they went along with it. The child believes that they did it too. Well, you did it with me. So even if the person doesn't overtly threaten the child, which a lot of them do, what they'll do over time is they'll say, well, if you ever tell somebody about all these things we've done, then you're going to go to jail, because, an adult and a child aren't supposed to do these things. So we'll both be in trouble, and you'll ruin my family. I'll go to jail, and you'll ruin everything for me, and you'll hurt my children, and you'll hurt other people. And so usually it's somebody, a trusted person that so you also know their family. So see the bind it gets you in as a little kid.
Yeah.
And they'll also say, if you tell your parents, they'll either not believe you and you'll get in big trouble for lying.
Right.
Or if they do believe you, then, you'll ruin their family, because this will bother them and they'll never recover. And, you just don't have the right to disturb your parents like that. And your mom will be so sad. And, your dad might come kill me, and then he'll be in jail. And then your mom and the rest of your siblings will starve to death, because it's like, see how real that is for a child. Usually you're in a situation where you're looking around and you realize that if the adults, blame you, which usually people do. So usually people don't believe the kid, and the kid gets in trouble. And then if they do believe you, the consequences are so big.
Right.
It changes everybody's life. And so all you have as a person to guide you to what happens is the person abusing you.
Right. Are
And
there
then,
children that make up stories? Because I know there's adults that do, because they're vindictive and sometimes they're trying to get somebody in trouble, or they're warring for children or whatever. But is this something that a child would actually create in their mind?
so my best answer from 20 years of experience is in clinical training is that if a child makes up an accusation against adult of sexual abuse or physical abuse, it would be coached by another adult. So some adult
Right.
has some agenda and they say,
Right.
okay, so now let's practice.
Got it.
So this is what we're going to say. So they'll have the kid practice it over and over and tell the story so many times that then when they set it up that the child tells whoever,
Right.
the child is very rehearsed. Okay. So when you are someone like myself, a therapist or a forensic evaluator that would talk to a child, like someone like law enforcement, we're trained to look at the context clues, right? So we're taught to look at, the child's eyes, their body language, their words. Does that sound like something a child would say?
Yeah.
Does it sound like something that's rehearsed? Every time you ask them, is it the same thing word for word? Right. So then you look at the family history. So you do a history. So you look at the context again and you say, okay, what's happening in the child's environment? And you say, are mom and dad divorced? Is there financial problems? Is there financial arguments? Is there property disputes? What's going on in the family that would benefit an adult to use a child in this way? And so most all the time, if you have a case like that, it's just not very complicated at all to very quickly just use those, do a thorough big picture, and you can just, it's easy to see that someone is exploiting the child.
Right.
So if a child is talking about it in terms of how a child would tell us anything else, and we look at their body, and for me, I'm trained to look at a trauma profile of if a child is talking about something like that is abuse, their body does certain things and it's a trauma response.
Got it.
So I'm going to look for clues of PTSD. So if I assess this child and they do have symptoms that are that match PTSD, and a child's telling me about abuse or neglect, then I'm going to say, well, that's consistent with this child truly being harmed. And then you also do the history.
Right.
And it is not that hard to figure that out.
Right.
So if a child makes up something crazy, there's almost always an adult bad guy somewhere in the bubble.
Yeah.
It would not be that a child just has a really otherwise normal upbringing. There's really nothing going on, and they just would make something like this up. We just don't see that.
So I want to go back to, because I kind of got you off the original question, which is, why is it that they kind of reel into a second layer after coming on the show?
So it's
or did you answer that and I didn't understand?
No, I didn't finish it.
Okay, good. And then I have another question afterwards about how to trust people with your children and what the criteria should be.
And so I always hold my breath a little bit when I see someone sharing for the first time on an open format like this. I wouldn't suggest someone I'm working with do that, because unless you can do it in the right way, if they have support and they have support for right after they share. And what I like about how you do it is you very much wholeheartedly support the person. You talk to them ahead of time, and you do provide a lot of that spiritual support and sort of, I would say, scaffolding around them. So that's essential. And then I would say they do need protection for after,
Mm-hmm.
because after you share, well-meaning people who want to reach out and just add support, if they don't know the boundaries about that, they can sort of overwhelm a person that just shared something big. Because when you share something big, your circuits are already kind of like, your bandwidth is sort of taken. And then it's hard for you to take in anymore until you kind of reset yourself back to kind of a normal baseline. So it's just a big physical event to share and to be vulnerable. And so it's also really, really good, and it's really healthy. And it also just, it excises all of that. It's like sort of like lancing a wound, and all the pus drains out. It's super, super helpful. Right. But what we would want to do around somebody is have some boundaries and give them some guidelines for after, because what's not good is if they are just flooded with emails and contact, and people say things that are, again, well-meaning, but, you know, oh, let me tell you about my story. I so appreciated what you shared, because here's my story and here's what happened. And then you dump a bunch of other trauma and abuse stories onto somebody who's just shared their own, and they only have so much bandwidth.
And then they want you to help them because you overcame it already.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's a way to say, if you're going to do this, then here's kind of the process. And then here's, since you haven't done this, here's what you should expect after you share. Here's the boundaries that I would encourage you to follow, is be mindful of when you've had enough, take a break. And then to let other people know this isn't the time to be calling them and sharing your stories. And also not give advice, because we don't know who's giving advice, right? And so what works for others might not work for the person that just shared. And it's all well-meaning stuff, but it's just stuff that is a little counterintuitive of just learning over time with great teachers. I've had great teachers. And so when we were in training and something came up, they had really very healthy boundaries of, now, everyone, don't go talk to them on the break, you know, give them space, let them have personal time to integrate, let them ask for the support that they need. So instead of us all trying to rescue and help, and here you need this, here you should do this, here do that, that isn't as appropriate as give the person what I was taught to call it, is the dignity of their own process.
Beautiful. Give
them the dignity of their own personal space, and let them ask for help if they need it, and don't help unless you're asked, and then don't offer things they didn't specifically ask for, because you just overwhelm them.
So good. You know, it's interesting too, because as you say that, I think about even now as I'm integrating things, you know, we're always healing. At least I am.
Hopefully. Me too.
And so, but I love to have that space. I'm like, I'll even sometimes choose something that I want to change, and I'll purposely buffer myself socially.
Yes.
I call it productive isolation.
But that is time to integrate and process the shift, right? Yeah. So it's so important after someone shares that they have peace and silence and that buffer, because they just let go of something that maybe they've been carrying for 30 or 40 years.
Right.
Their body now has this open space. So it's very important to be on purpose and protective of what then you're exposed to go back in. Okay, so you move something out, so you have an empty space. You want to be really on point with what you put in the space. You cleared a space, be really picky and discerning about what goes in when you're in that open, vulnerable rewiring. You don't want other toxic stuff going in.
Good.
And also, sometimes people are vulnerable
so I'm going to interrupt just because I want an example. So give me an example of something that, let's say somebody came on the show and I mentioned to them that this is something that you've suggested to me. I'm just sharing, information. What would be something that would be an example?
I would say don't give out their email for other people to contact them. So create like a buffer, and then advise the person that's going to share that this is a wonderful thing that they're sharing. Such a big step in their healing, and that you are providing that spiritual protection for them. And here's what you recommend. So you would say, after you share, I want you to just be with yourself, and I want you to plan to take a few days where you're not working and having people over, and tell me when's a good time so that you can take the day after and just not really do anything, and have that be a time for journaling, for a lot of just, already have nice comfort food in your house, go to the store before and have those creature comforts. Go ahead and get some blank journals, get your music ready, things that support you, that make you feel, comfortable. And then have that time as a spiritual time with your creator and with your higher self. And take that time just for conversation with you. And then you can have 1 to 3 people that you trust. And you would set that up ahead of time and say, here's the 3 people that we know you're going to share this. We are also available for the next 3 days. We know that you've just gone through this, and we're going to hold space, and we're also going to be available to you. So you make sure you have 3 people that would know how to do that. And then you have them where they're just sort of on call, as we're supposed to do for each other, is to care for each other and be there for each other. But you be selective in who you have that person contact for just 3 days, where, there's a sacred 3 is a sacred number. And so 3 days is a good amount of time where you have very specific, healthy support. And you do want to have people that you reach out to, and you want to have kind of your creature comforts set up so that you can just really go into this space of loving and nurturing and care, but you protect yourself from the outside world, because you don't want people that you don't know coming into that space.
Right.
So even people that are well-meaning, if they just don't have the prep and the boundaries, they just might unknowingly, their help might not be helpful. And also, I would say, in a format like this, where this is open to the public, there are also creepy crawlers, is what I would call them. There are creepy crawlers.
I try to block most of those.
But it's just not possible to block all of them. And so creepy crawlers are also very good at disguising themselves as knight in shining armor and helpers, right? And so some of these helpers are a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they come in to harm. And some of them really don't do it unconsciously. Some of them don't do it consciously, I would correct, but some of them don't mean to, but they have their own trauma, and they get this like trauma bond, sort of like adrenaline hit of, and it just feeds their own negativity.
It's my story.
And they want to help, and the way that they avoid their own trauma is they rescue someone else. And it's coming from an unhealthy, dysregulated, imbalanced trauma place. So their help is a trauma reaction, so that they don't have to remember their own story, and they can be busy fixing someone else, and it helps protect them from their trauma. But it comes with this frenetic adrenaline, sort of an unhealthy, not regulated calm state. So it feeds the chaos.
When are the, because there are a few that like to interact with people, and they do want to give out their information. What are the criterion that you would say would help them? Like, okay, I'm getting to the point where I can share the story and I'm not crying, or I'm getting to where I can listen to somebody else's problems and it doesn't trigger me. What are some of the criterion like that?
What I would say is you want somebody to get connected to someone local. So before somebody would share, I would say, do you have 1 or 2 people that are local that are already an emotional and spiritual support for you? People that are safe, people that you have that are right there where you are. And then I would say you don't have someone share on a format like this until they have a local support. And then you have them talk with that local support and that there's a collateral opinion that they're ready. You have a collateral as an extra person that can bear witness and say, yeah, I've sat with her. I kind of know what's really going on with their life. And all things considered and knowing what she has going on, I feel like she could do this. I'm here to support her. I would be available. And I really feel like this would be a good thing to do. So you do things, you heal in consultation and you heal in fellowship. Fellowship is an important spiritual process of you can't heal by yourself. God just doesn't let us do that, which I argued with God for a good 15 years. I said, I don't need to have someone staring at me to cry about that. I hated that. I really, really resisted for a really long time. So I just thought I could read the books and I could understand the principles and I could just sit in my house by myself and fix all my own problems. That was my preference. And then that's not the way that healing works, because you have to have fellowship. You have to have someone bear witness. It's where two or more are gathered. That is where I too am with you. And so that's not God's plan. So I had to finally, step out into that. And I didn't like it. It was very hard for me to let someone help me. I just didn't have a safe reference point for that. But that's a common thing with trauma too. Mm-hmm. So we have to remember that when you have been traumatized and lied to and cheated and abused, you might not really have anybody that you can trust. And so that's an essential part of the healing, because it just sort of reinforces the trauma if we don't have the right setup for someone to share. Right. So I would say someone shares and they don't disclose their last name. They don't disclose personal information. You don't disclose where they live, because then again, it can be well-meaning people want to reach out, but it isn't the right kind of help, and it can overwhelm the person and send them back in the hole, and just physically like too much, because sometimes people overhelp. Right. And it just, then you feel bad as the person that, oh, these people are here to help me, but how can I tell them that I'm so exhausted? Right. I can't talk for another hour on the phone. I need to sleep and take a nap. And they wanted to come over and sit with me and help me with whatever, but I'm so tired. I just want to sleep. Right. So you can get into those kind of just logistical issues that you just front loaded, and there's a little checklist ahead of time. And this is something I was taught in graduate school, because what they had us do is they said, if you're going to be helpful to someone else, you need to do your own work. So they had the nerve to make us do our own work, and they had us practice on each other, but with real stuff, not just role play. Like they said, bring your stuff. We're going to do it together. And so as people shared with their class real stuff, there were very, very consistent, healthy boundaries that had to be followed. And it was really great for them to model that to us. But also, I really got to see over a period of a 3-year program how important it was, because your healing really has to be your responsibility. Yep. But it also has to be your sovereign space. Your healing space is so personal. Yeah. And it no one really knows what you need but you. And you have to have some stillness and peace to say, what do I need? And you have to kind of like flip and flop, and kind of like, it takes a little bit to even figure out.
Find your zone. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that is part of the healing. So if a bunch of people rush in, you won't do any of that work, because people are rushing in to sort of fix it for you. Right. So it doesn't have the same dynamic change from the inside out, because people are helping you. So it isn't as much of your ownership of your process. And also, it's so important to feel the pain in a safe place. And if you need help, you reach out, but you do need to sit and just do the ugly cry if it comes up.
All the way. I tell people, Cry all the way out.
It's
Don't try to
detox.
stop it.
It's detox because just like sweating, if you don't sweat, that's going to be a problem. You can't protect your health if you can't sweat when it's hot. So if you are emotionally overwhelmed with abuse, neglect, and pain, we're supposed to feel that so we never repeat it and we don't be around people like that. So it's an important part of our memory of learning from experience. But those tears are a part of the detoxification of the toxic holding of the shame and the secret. It causes adrenaline, cortisol. Those are toxic stress hormones. So when you reset the system, you're supposed to detox all that stuff. So you want people to just have peace and stillness, to just do that and then rest and sleep. Because when you have a big cry, and I always tell people, don't be afraid of those. They don't last very long. If you'll just go for it, it's over quicker than if you try to hold it in, it'll just drag out. So just dive in and just ride the wave. And a good 20 minutes, if you really go for it, you're done in 20 minutes. Some 10, 5, you'll just push right through it. It doesn't last that long. And then you might want to sleep. You might want to just sleep. And that's when your unconscious and conscious database in your hard drive resets your conscious and unconscious. And so you do need a lot of sleep when you've just done a big dump like that. And that's another reason you want to have downtime planned for like 3 days after you do a big share, because it's the body has to catch up to being alive without that secret and that shame. It's been carrying it for some time. And so it goes, whoa, give me a minute. But you need to give it a minute so that everything can reset around, I don't have a secret anymore. I'm not carrying a secret for somebody. And you just have this big physiological, and it's like the physical and the spirit have a big upgrade to do. And you want to have enough time to just rest and sit around and just, have that buffer. And then you have to be selective of who comes into your space.
Well, and it's so cool because some of them end up, after they go through that, they come back stronger than ever. And it's so cool to see. So I don't want to discourage anyone from that freeing feeling, but I do love what you're saying. And I thank you for teaching me this, because I didn't know it at first. And I think it's essential and very important. And, I'm sorry for anyone that I was ignorant,
But it's all good, because that's divinely inspired too, is that it helped for you to see there is such a need for a place right now for people to have a detox and have a good, safe, protected space for somebody to facilitate it, because that's bearing witness. So bearing witness, you're very good at holding the space. You're very, very good at creating. I feel it when you do it. I can see it and I can feel it, that you create this very prayerful, protected, loving, unconditional. Oh, I feel it. You create this real vortex of love and protection, and you're very strong in your nurturing and protection. You have a good, nice, strong feminine energy that comes in and says, you will be safe with me to share, and I will take care of you, and I will make sure this is a safe place. And for the people that you've had on, they've probably never had a strong feminine receiver like that. So it's incredibly powerful. And my guess would be that the little bit of learning curves is so that it can get set up. So I would know that if the intention is that God wanted us to create a collaborative experience where you also ask me for help, I offer help, and that we have a team around all of us, including anyone that comes to you for help, is that you do always have me on your team.
For sure. And I
already have all these spiritual warriors. And so I would guess, in my experience of working with God, is that God had that all figured out. He had that all in hand. He made sure that it was the right people that started it, and that they were properly shored up, and that they would be the ones that helped get this set up, and that they're perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Right. That's my sense.
Do you need to go?
My dog dropped her ball under a chair. So hold on one second.
Yeah, no worries. That's hilarious. And so what I was wanting to ask her when she gets back is the question about how to know when your child is safe. I was telling them what I was going to ask you next. I wanted to go into I want to stick with this safety thing. There's so many people that their children end up in a mess because they've trusted adults. What are some of the boundaries we should have just out of the gate? You know, there should be certain boundaries we have for our children from the time that they're itty bitty to the time that they're older. And what are those?
So I would say the younger your child is, the more you supervise. So you have to, because the younger you are, the more vulnerable you are to all of this. And the less verbal you are to be able to then tell your parent. Because some parents have a false sense of, well, if something happened, my child would tell me. And young children don't have the language skills. They don't have the life experience tapes going. They don't tell you. Mm-hmm. You won't know. And so, so don't have that misunderstanding. And then the younger they are, the more damaging some of this stuff that you're never going to know about it can be. So it's your responsibility. 13 and under is the time that you supervise. You have to know someone long enough. You have to put time in. You have to hang out with them. So what I did when my kids were little, it takes a lot of time, but that's just what it takes. Is I have to sit with their playmates, friends, parents, you know, their friends' parents. I have to stand there and talk to them a lot. I have to like look for context clues about who are they as people, not just what do they look like from the outside, but that you have to put enough time in to see who somebody really is. And then I have to know who the father is, right? So if I just get to know the mom at a PTA meeting, and I get to know a mom at a brownie meeting and dance class and play dates, I don't know the dad, and I don't know other people in the house. So I don't know if there's older siblings. I don't know if there's somebody that lives with them. I don't know the other people around, older children that could be dangerous and harmful, and expose them to danger. So, oops.
Yeah,
a call came in. So you have to put time in to see who, what, where, and you also have to observe those adults, how they supervise their children. So are those people that actually watch their children? Because there's people that I had in my neighborhood who were like the nicest people, and I really, they're good people. Nothing crazy is going to happen at their house as far as abuse, but they just don't watch their children. So they, you know, clean their house or cook dinner or whatever, and the kids just are off playing. So that's not adequate supervision.
Right.
So you have to just look and see kind of, is there a parent that when they're talking to you, they're also watching their kids? So they're talking to you and they're like, oh, slow down. And then they're like, oh, go ahead. And then they're like, oh, just a second. Okay, wait, you guys, stay right here. Don't go. That's the kind of parent you're looking for. So you want to look for, are there guns in the house? Is there a lot of alcohol? Every time you talk to these parents, do they have a beer in their hand? Because there's nothing wrong with drinking alcohol. You can't like eliminate everybody that drinks alcohol, but are these people somebody that would limit their alcohol when they're in charge of watching the kids? So, oh, I'm on deck watching kids, so I can't drink right now because I'm watching my children and somebody else's kids. So you go to parties with people and you can kind of see, or if you go to you go to events and you can see if I had lots of nice people that were really good people, but we would go to a party with the kids running around and the mom and the dad would get kind of tipsy. And I'm thinking, well, now who's watching their kids, let alone if my children are at their house. And at a certain point, there's no really supervision. So then I just eliminate I don't eliminate them as friends, and I don't eliminate them as a peer group for me or my kids, but I know that if I'm with them, I also have to be there to supervise, and then it's fine. Then I stay sober and I'm fine. And they come to my house and play. So there's a lot of times that you can just, you can still keep people in your bubble, but you're either always there, either you or someone that you trust, like a babysitter goes with them if they go to a play date, or you go yourself, or you have them come to your house. So there's ways to do it where you're not overtly overdoing it, and you're also not being rude and hurting people's feelings. So you don't want to never let your kids go somewhere to play. You don't want to never let your kids go with other people, because that's going to give them anxiety.
Right. And so that's a really good point too. So you've got to have the balance and the discernment, because you don't want them to be afraid of the world.
Right. You don't say out loud.
Right. This is good.
6 and 8. You don't say, no, you can't go to Claire's house because her parents don't watch you as good as I need them to. You don't say that, because your child will then later say, no, I'm not allowed to come over after school because my mom says that you don't watch us good enough.
Yes, they will.
Don't do that. And you also want to talk to your kids a lot. You have to do it over and over, because they change as they age. A 6-year-old, you tell them something, and then you got to say it again when they're 8, again when they're 9, because they're different people, and their development is more, complicated each age stage. So you say, okay, when you go over to their house, if there's something scary that happens or they're not watching you, I wouldn't let you go unless they were good people.
Right.
So I like Claire's parents. They're good people. We like them. So it's nothing about that, but it's just life isn't perfect. So if you're over at a friend's house and these things happen, then you just give me a call.
We had a code word.
Ask Claire's mom. Yes. You do that. And you say, before I gave my kids cell phones, I didn't want them to have cell phones when they're really little. So I would say, this is where you go and ask Amy to call me, and that you needed to tell me something.
Right.
And then we have like a code word. Like, oh, can you remember to wash my soccer outfit? And then I know that I need to go pick them up.
Yep.
And then you have to go down the list. If they're watching things that are inappropriate. Now, my kids know when they were younger, I don't want them watching murder stuff on TV. I don't want them to watch R-rated movies. It's too intense for a little person, and they have nightmares, and that's why there's ratings, right? They don't have the bandwidth. So to see those things without it disturbing their peace, right? So I'm trying to
protecting them against any type of sexual molestations or abuse or things, because sometimes kids won't even know that.
Well, and that's on us, as just like we say, you have to look both ways before you cross the street, or you have to be with someone and hold their hand. So, we don't let 3 and 4 and 5 and even 6-year-olds just cross the street by themselves for a very good reason. They don't have the skills yet to navigate that. So you build these things, and they eventually learn to look and cross the street, and then eventually they can do it themselves, but you watch kind of how they are. So we are supposed to scaffold that of stranger danger and body safety as young as possible. So you start at 3 and 4 and 5, and you say, this is your body. No one should touch your body. Nobody is supposed to touch your private parts, and you show them where somebody's not supposed to touch them. And then you say, and you don't touch their parts. So when you're playing with your friends, you don't touch their body inappropriately. You don't touch without asking, and someone shouldn't be touching you without asking. And then it's like, kids are like, oh, just like anything else they're learning. So don't make it weird.
Right.
And what I said to my kids is, because otherwise they'll pick up on that energy, and you'll make them anxious.
Right.
And so I say, how you could pick your own nose if you want to. And my kids are like, yeah, okay, you can pick your own nose. Would you pick your friend's nose? No. Okay. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with picking your nose. Everyone has to do it, but you don't pick your friend's nose. That's inappropriate. So don't put your hands on your friend.
Right.
So that's their body. If they need to touch it, they will. But it's not your job to be all touching their physical stuff. Stay out of their space. Don't touch their face. Don't play with their hair. Don't put your finger in their ear. You just make it kind of fun so that it's like, and then don't touch them anywhere else. Like you keep your hands to yourself, and you can give your friend a hug if it's okay. And they don't mind a hug, but some people don't like hugs. So you need to see if your friend even likes that. But no one's allowed to hug you or touch you if you don't want to be hugged. And you have to let your kids practice saying, I don't want to hug right now, without them getting in trouble for being rude.
That's beautiful.
You say, I will back you up. If anyone, it could be somebody that, Dad and I like, and that are our friends. But if they just want to hug you and you don't want to hug them, you're allowed to say, I don't want to hug right now.
Good.
And then I will back you up. And if they say, which probably they won't, if I've already checked them out and they're in our bubble, but it could, oh my gosh, your son was just I just gave him a hug and he was so upset. And then I'm going to back you up. I'm going to say, yes, I told Roman that he was allowed to say, I don't want to hug. And so I'm so glad he did that. And then I've had this conversation with my friends.
It's a good teaching moment for
that's what happens. And they go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm just trying to teach him boundaries as a little kid. And that if he doesn't want a hot dog, he's allowed to say, no, thank you. I don't want a hot dog. That I'm letting him have boundaries with adults. So I hope he said it nicely. And oh yes, he was very nice in how he told me, don't touch me. And I said, oh, good. But that's how you set that protection grid. And you say to your child,
I love it.
If you ever have an adult that gets upset because you said personal space, please don't touch me. No, thank you. And that you will be backed up by me. You will not get in trouble. So and then you have to walk through, you say, if you're at school and you have a teacher and the teacher puts their hands on you somewhere and it just makes you have that icky feeling. That's all you gotta say. You just have that icky feeling like, I don't really want your hand. So then you say, that's all you need. And you say to the adult, could you please not touch me? I don't like to be touched.
Beautiful.
And then if that person is rude to you, then you tell mom and I will handle it. And so you set that up, but you have to kind of keep talking. And then when they go to a new house, you say, so how was it? What were they watching on TV? Because you want your children to start learning their own values, your values. And then I say, every parent is different. It doesn't mean that they're bad parents and they don't care about their children. I just have a different rule for what I think kids should see at certain ages. When you're older, you can watch all those movies. And so it doesn't mean that they're bad, scary parents if they let their kids watch movies that you don't watch. It just doesn't mean that. It's just different families have different rules. So you got to make sure that you set that up so that you don't set your kids up to be afraid of people and not trust people. You say, every person is different. You know how in this family we do this and they do this. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just, these are our rules. So I want you to carry our family rules wherever you go, at school, at a friend's house, in the neighborhood. This is just how we do it. And when you grow up, you can have whatever rules you want. But while you're little, me and dad are in charge of the rules. It's my job to make sure you grow up as best as possible. It can't be perfect, but this is just how it is. And so when you're old enough to have your own rules, you will. But while you're little, I'm just going to get you set up. And then I had to tell my kids too, like if someone, once cell phones kind of came out and parents usually get kids cell phones somewhere around 4th, 5th, 6th grade. So in general, and so you've got to start telling kids that if another kid says, hey, look at this, and they show you their phone. If it's something that's creepy or scary or anything that you just go, oh, what is that? Then here's what you do. You say, I don't want to look at that. And if you're my friend, I'm telling you, I don't like things like that. So don't show me those things anymore. And I said, don't be mad at them because they don't know the first time.
Right.
They're just a kid. But just say, I don't like things like that. So I don't want to see things like that. And then I said, if you have a friend that respects that and stops showing you things, you're good. If you have a friend that knows that you don't want to look at it, so then they think it's funny, and they go, hey, Austin doesn't like this, so let's show him this. Hey, Austin. And then you say, is it something that I already told you I don't want to look at? And if they say, no, but it is. So I just explain to them, it doesn't mean they're mean. It doesn't mean they don't like you. They're just a kid. So kids are just learning and you're learning. So, sometimes even somebody that is a nice friend will do this because they're just a kid. And so if that happens, then as soon as you see it, you say, okay, I told you that I don't like that. You showed it to me again. I know you think it's funny, but it isn't. And I said the second time, that might mean that that's not somebody that you keep as a friend.
Or definitely don't trust them with their phone.
Right. And so I said, then after that, when they say, hey, look at this, and you say, you just say, I'm not going to look at it. And then that way your child knows how to protect themselves.
It's beautiful. What about sleeping over? That'll be my last question. Is there an age that you suggest for sleepovers, or is it more, like you said, just they're qualified supervisors?
And until your kids are old enough and you have practice and you've let them practice out in the world, you've let them practice with family, you've let them practice with you. So you have to let your kids say no to you, or they can't say no to others. So you have to let them say no to, no, I don't want broccoli, and no, I don't want to wear that red shirt. Can I wear another one? You have to give them age appropriate sovereignty and autonomy and like personal boundaries, or they can't do it.
Right.
So if you as a parent invade their boundaries and just override them and say, well, I'm doing it, you're going to set them up to be abused by others. So that won't work. You got to walk the walk. So you have to protect your kids. And if you're trying to clean their ears and they say, stop, I don't want you to touch my ears, you have to stop. And then you go, okay, but I need to take care of your ears, or I need to clean out your
you got pudding in them.
Yes, there's something, and you just have to back off. And you just have to say, okay, well, I need to do this. So I will wait. I'll give you a break. But you have to let them start saying no to you, and or they can't do it with others. So then you watch your kid and see how good they are at their no's. There's some kids just based on their personalities, they will tell anybody no.
Yeah. And
so you're in a little bit better position if you have a real assertive kid that just
knows what they like.
My middle son Roman, he just came like that. He was just he had a real strong safety compass and moral compass. And he'd be somewhere and he would just tell, it didn't matter who it was, an adult or a kid, he'd be like, that is actually not okay. And I'm out of here. I'm going home.
I love it.
And I'd be like, whoop, and I'd deal with the fallout. It was really funny, but he just was like, so I was like, now that kid will stand up for himself. But if you have a child that just based on their personality, they just are not good at it. They just, it's not in their spirit to do that. Then you don't let that kid have sleepovers until they're a lot older, because most of the time abuse is going to happen in the younger ages. So what you do is you just have sleepovers at your house, and you don't make a big deal about it. And you do not say to your kid, right, well, y'all can have sleepovers here, but I don't want you sleeping at their house. You can't say that out loud. You don't say that. You say,
there's so many things that people say out loud that I just don't even understand why they don't. But I appreciate you making that, because I always assume people are that smart. And I think sometimes they weren't taught that in their family, so they just didn't know.
You don't do that, because look how confusing it is your kids. So you're friends with them. I see you hang out with them. We see them at church. They're on our Girl Scout,
Right.
troop. They're on our soccer team. You and dad hang out with them, but they're not safe enough for me to sleep at their house. So why do you hang out with people that aren't safe? See, how do you explain that to a 9-year-old?
Yeah.
Because then the 9-year-olds don't trust you because they're like, so let me get this straight.
So inconsistent.
Yeah, it just is not something that the younger kids can understand complexity. So you wait,
Right.
and it's your job to just do those things and keep it on the down low, because it's not like a secret. It's just they don't have the capacity to understand the complexity.
Right. That's good. Yeah. Thank you so much. This is great. People love having you. And every time we finish, I get emails saying, can you ask Terrina this? Or is there any way she could take me on? But right now, I'm just going to tell you guys, she's working long and hard days, and it's hard to get in with her. And definitely check out somebody local. Or actually with Zoom nowadays, you could go anywhere in the country. Just find somebody that's willing to work with you that has the specialty that you need, right?
Yeah. And just so everybody knows too, is the way that licensing works. Let me get this ball for this dog again.
Okay.
The way that licensing works is that she threw her ball in a bag, and the bag was on a shelf. It's the smartest little bulldog. Okay. So the way licensing works is I'm licensed in the state of Arizona. So I am not allowed to do therapy with someone that is located in another state.
I didn't know that.
If you're located in Arizona, I can do therapy with you. If I'm in Arizona and you're in Montana, I can't do therapy stuff with you, but I can do brain coaching. I could do coaching.
Got it.
But I can't do any kind of therapy, deeper processing. That is not allowed unless you're licensed in the state where the person is. So if I have a lot of people that they fly in from out of town to work with me, and I've done that for like the last 12 years, is I will have people that just want to do a piece of work, and maybe they already have a therapist and they'll just want to do a little trauma mini intensive. And so we set it up, they fly in, they spend 3 days with me, and we just do immersion. We just do a big chunk of work over 3 days, and then they fly home. So if you come to see me and we set that up, I can work with someone that lives in another state, but I am not allowed to do therapy unless someone is either here.
But the brain stuff
I'm
you can
licensed.
help people with.
Yeah. So if I do the brain coaching and the Amen brain health, optimizing your brain health and all that, I can do that. Perfect. And then there's also a lot of other brain coaches. So I would say if you want a brain health coach that does that brain stuff that I do, call the Amen clinics, call any of the Amen clinics. Tell them where you live, and they will send you the Amen trained brain coaches in your area. And you can work with one of them, and they have the same training that I have.
Right. And then one more time, who do you suggest people go to if they have trauma and they have hardly any resources?
So the very best first place I would send you, it's the EMDR. It's their nonprofit website. So it's EMDRIA.org. And you go on there and you say, find a therapist, and you click that, you put your zip code in, and it will pull up all of the EMDR trained. They are the best at trauma. There's others that are good, but that is a absolute, anyone that has EMDR trained is a good, competent, well trained person that can handle just about any of the deeper kind of trauma. So I know you're in good shape if you go to an EMDR trained therapist. And you can go and find someone local there. And then you can also, if money is an issue, then, some EMDR therapists take insurance as payments and you pay a copay, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them will give you a little super bill to get reimbursed, but you have to pay for their service. So if you want to do that, but funds are a problem, then you can contact any one of those EMDR therapists that are in your area, and you say, I was told that EMDR is really good for what I need. I'm really ready to do work. but finances are an issue. Do you work on a sliding scale? And if not, can you help me find an EMDR therapist that works on sliding scale? We all know each other. We have a little website where we email each other. I have all over, the country. So we all do that. It's like, okay. Hey, does anybody do sliding scale and can take a new client right now? I have someone that needs that. And then they'll have responses. The EMDR people will help you find somebody. And usually they kind of know the resources in their area. Mm-hmm. So usually you can find somebody that even with EMDR will work with you on a sliding scale. So the sliding scale in general, you ask them what their sliding scale is, but let's say that you make $30,000 a year, then you could pay $30. Or I've had people that make $30,000 a year and they have a couple of kids, so they pay me $10. That's what they can afford. Right. So I worked with a couple of people that paid me $10 an hour for a year, and I was fine with that because they paid me what they could afford. If you make $85,000 a year, you could pay $85 an hour. So it's kind of like that, sort of 10% of your. If you make $50,000, they might ask you to pay $50. But if you are in a situation, sometimes when you have trauma come up, you're also not really very healthy and you have problems with money, and we know that. So we have a way to make sure that as a profession, we have you covered in that way. So there's therapists that sometimes will have you work with a doctoral intern that is under supervision. Good. So sometimes you can work with a doctoral intern that is needing supervision hours. Mm-hmm. And then they're supervised by someone like myself. I'm a supervisor and I teach other therapists how to work with trauma. And so they get me and another therapist. And so you get really good care when you work, just so everybody knows, when you work with someone under supervision, you get two therapists and you get really, really good care because it's used for clinical super. Yeah. And you get the real, really solid stuff where somebody's like, watching everything you do. So you get really good therapy. So sometimes places will do that for free. Mm-hmm. Usually it works better when you have a little bit of buy-in. So
totally agree with that.
A lot of times it's not good to just do it completely pro bono, but
that they're vested. And then too, if you're doing a good enough job, which I know you do, then over time they're going to be able to afford something, or they'll be feeling so good they'll be off doing their own life.
That is exactly how it works when you work with someone like with the EMDR groups. Is we can get you really feeling great in like 3 or 4 sessions. You'll be really like stabilized, grounded, you'll feel good. And then like, wow, that was really helpful. Like, so I really want to like work and get enough money to really do a little bit more of that. So that's how it works. And a lot of times, if you're not making progress, we're not going to keep working with you.
Right.
So when I do it, I take people on a sliding scale. I look at whether this is an appropriate person to take on sliding scale. Could this person really benefit from the time? I'm not going to waste my time or theirs, Mm-hmm. And so if I feel like they have a great opportunity to really benefit from it, I feel so good about giving it because I see them just blossom and thrive. And it's so fun for me when they'll come rewarding. Back. Yeah. And they'll come back and go, I am calling to make an appointment and I can pay your full fee. And they're so cool. Proud of themselves. And it's it's a really neat way again to bear witness to somebody's progress. So I don't mind helping somebody when they're down.
Right.
It just has to be a fit that's appropriate for them and not creating dependence and, unhealthy thing. But, it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of therapists do it. A lot of therapists just have a good heart for making sure it's a good fit, but always ask because it's just not something that people know, but I still do sliding scale. Mm-hmm. And I have 10% of my business at any given time that I always have at
So if
least
somebody
that
drops
much.
off or they
Yep.
graduate, then you pull in
Then I have
somebody
room
else.
for somebody else.
Yeah.
And there's been times where I've done, I've gone up to 20 or 25% just because I was in a position that I could. There
Right.
was times when I was in good shape financially and I had the bandwidth, and I would always pray about each person that asked for it. And there were times that I had a little more because I could. And so other therapists kind of make their own, balance, but I always have at least 10 to 15% that I just do like that. And then again, when someone graduates to where they're paying, then I have room for someone else.
Yeah. Yay.
So
Well,
I've
thank
always
you
done
so
that.
much. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for helping me and for all of the people who get the benefit of not paying anything if they watch you on here.
Yeah. And that's like the thing is right now there's a therapy shortage. There's most of the therapists that I refer to are full. I'm full. It's really, I don't like the current environment. I get personal stress over there being right now such a need, and a lot of therapists aren't taking new clients. So it's a true issue for sure in Arizona. Well, a lot of people that I refer to, they refer to me, we're all calling each other and going, oh my gosh, no one has room for new clients. This is not okay, because when people need help, we can't just say, oh, sorry. Like, just they call around and nobody is open to new. So I would say in this gap, if people wrote to you and said, here's something that I have a specific need, and then you and I together could figure out if there's something, sometimes there's just a psychoeducation thing that we could do. We could provide education and we could just offer basic skills, and we could help with certain things with just this. And it's a free, support, but it's also just appropriate right now when there's not a lot of therapists available, that we have some other avenues of
for people to get the information.
Things that you can do yourself, things that you can learn to do for your anxiety, things that you can do for stress. So there's definitely a lot of topics that we could just do a little
I love
education
this one.
thing.
The healthy boundaries for kids was good.
So anything like that, we can do a little education piece on certain things. So I'm happy to do that anytime that it makes sense.
Perfect. Let's do it again. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody that joined us.